House UMBC shirt for many, many moons. It has the old sponsor on the back, which I enjoy greatly, and I say Adidas because they're German and they helped save my wife's life. But the UMBC swag around here was out in full force. I was down at Judas Priest at Anthem on Sunday night, monitoring the game on my phone, which is, you say football on your phone. How about basketball on your phone? But there are a few old school guys like me and like Robert Canady who knew our way to the rack well before UMBC was literally the toast of the country. Robert Canady joins us now, of course, from Compass Point Golf Course and, of course, our local college basketball aficionado and guru. How many years you been going down to the rack to watch basketball? Since certainly back in the Tom Sullivan era. I remember seeing you around there then, and we're going back 20 years ago now, right?
Well, rarely back then, but occasionally, but regularly the last 3 to 4 years, and pretty much almost every home game this year and several last year. So, but yeah, rarely a few years back now and then.
Well, here's the deal, man. They win on Friday night, and I know they're going to play on Sunday night, and I'm like, who am I going to get on the show that is a UMBC expert, like people that are at the games? You know, Stein and Mittermeier call the games. Feinstein's been there a whole lot this year. You're there. Steve Levy's there. Ryan Odom's there. But I really can't think of 10 people to call who, like when it comes to Maryland, there's a Washington Post reporters and there's Diamondback. People, watch them play. But with UMBC, who are the experts on UMBC other than, like, no offense, you? I mean, you've seen them play as much as anybody. So, put this into perspective for me. This is why you love going to Towson and UMBC and Lloyd. It's your thing, And I guess it's your thing that one of these teams one day will be that Coppin State 97 team that, David that slays the Goliath kind of thing. And here it turns out that UMBC pulls the greatest upset in the history of college basketball. It's still a pinch-me moment. I don't even know how to put it into perspective, but maybe you can as well, because must have been a hell of a weekend for you, Rob.
It really was. It was surreal. Up until Wednesday, I wasn't sure whether I was going to go down or not. I had really wanted to, had the credential all set. Had actually talked to about a couple people about sharing a ride down, a couple of the other local reporters who decided they weren't going to go, that it wasn't worth the one and done to make the trip. And and then things at the golf course were kind of crazy. So
and by the way, hard to talk to Maryland people into that if they went to New York and did the one and done at lunchtime there. That's no fun. I've done the one and dones. I drove to Knoxville, Tennessee for a 3-day weekend with Maryland 20 years ago, and Steve Francis couldn't find the floor. St. John's, they went 15 minutes without scoring. Gary was pissed off, and the thing was over. We pulled into the parking lot, and it felt like we turned around and drove back to Nashville. It was the worst weekend of my life to go to Maryland and Knoxville, Tennessee, to watch them lose a 7 o'clock game on Thursday night. It sucked.
Yeah, it really was. I mean, of course, once in a lifetime. Okay, once in 10 years. They were in there 10 years ago, but here they were within driving distance. They had a pretty good representation of students that went down and made a bus trip.
Yeah, it wasn't Boise, right? I mean, Boise's a whole different. Sure, I understand.
Yeah. So Friday night, I did something different. I purposely stayed off Twitter during the game because a lot of times, you know this, when you're on Twitter, you get so wrapped up in the back and forth, you actually miss what's going on in the game, So,
well, you can either watch the game or watch Twitter, and certainly in a baseball environment, it's easier, I think. In a football environment where you've got those 25 seconds, having done this now for a decade, basketball or hockey, I mean, tweeting during hockey is just dumb. I mean, I don't know what to say. I mean, you got to follow the puck, Basketball's pretty much like that. I agree. I think it's very hard to read on Twitter and watch a basketball game. Yes.
Right. So, I was really in tune to it, and I probably like everyone, I kept saying, I just hope they stay close, and I just hope they stay close. And you and I talked about it last week. I think you specifically said, if they get to 10 minutes and they're only down 7, 8, 9 points, what an accomplishment that'll be, and that was in the back of my mind that whole second half. But the thing is, they weren't down 7 or 9. They were up 14, 16, and I kept thinking, holy cow.
I'm in, right.
This could really happen. And I mean, just what an incredible game they played. Probably obviously the best that they've played all year as far as that second half, and the defense that they played against Virginia. And you can say what you want that Virginia, did or didn't show up, and they were missing a player, but I mean, it was incredible to watch. And then of course there was how would they respond on Sunday? Would they just be overwhelmed and get blown out by 30? And that was a tough game to watch, because both teams struggled offensively, but again, it was to credit to their defenses, and, there they were. It was a single-digit game the entire time. They were up by 8 at one point. They probably lost an opportunity to really put some pressure on. They could have been up 15 to 2 or 3 early, but they missed a lot of shots, and, Kansas State played the defense probably that they were expecting to see against Virginia Friday night. Kansas State was just so quick on defense and so big. But UMBC was right back there with them, just guarding the perimeter well. I think the final stats, Kansas State was 1 of 13 or 14 maybe from three-point range. So just what an incredible, run for them there, including, the conference championship game. I heard some people on Twitter after it was all over say, you can't call a one win a run, but yeah, you can. You win the conference championship game on the road against Vermont, you blow out Virginia, the number 1 overall seed, and you take, the next game down to the final 1 minute. Absolutely. You can call that a good run in the tournament.
Oh, well, I don't think there's any doubt. And look, I go back 21 years ago to having the Coppin State kids visit me in the studio. I fed them pizza famously. I'm going to be sharing those pictures this week because they're kind of old school with Fang and that group. But if you remember back to that Coppin State game, and I said this to my wife all weekend, I'm like, Coppin almost beat Texas. They really had a chance to win that game and go to the 16. And at that time, it was kind of unheard of. There had been no Butlers or VCUs or George Masons or, Florida Gulf Coast or any of that stuff 21 years ago. If Coppin would have been in the 16, that would have been the smallest school ever, and certainly UMBC as a 16 seed to beat a 1, that ain't ever been done. To find themselves in a position, and they were in a position all night Sunday night, even down to 2 minutes left to go in the game, that if they started to drain 2 or 3 threes, if Sherburne got hot or if Lyles got a look or whatever, they would have been in a better position. But I guess we will lament this, and I still would lament it. I'm sure, Fang plays it out 21 years later, that if this, then that, if this 3, if that foul, whatever, UMBC is going to have to play that even after Sunday night because they didn't get blown out. They weren't in that position. I put the West Virginia game on in the middle of the night when I got home. It's a 30-point game. Marshall, 30-point game. UMBC wasn't in that. I think it's a lot easier on your head when you just get your ass kicked than when, or certainly for Virginia, than when Vermont didn't guard Lyles and they're thinking UMBC should have never been in there. All we got to do is put a body on Lyles at the top of the key, and there would have never been a UMBC, and there would have never been a Virginia or whatever. But from the UMBC side, I'm sure Ryan's going to play this out as well. They had a lot of opportunities to win the game on Sunday night, and I think that's the part that's going to not feel so good about having the Cinderella and beating Virginia, is that Kansas State game was sitting there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he said a little bit. I saw the press conference he did afterwards on TV where, he wasn't going to let the defeat take away from what they've accomplished. But, when it's all said and done, he's a coach, and he's going to look back and see those 18 turnovers and, the 6 for 22 3-point shooting and the 9 of 18 free throw shooting. I mean, those are stats that if they had during the regular season, they're likely to lose against Maine. And, here they had those stats and a chance to beat another Power 5 conference with a team with a minute to go and go to the 16. So you absolutely are going to look back and think what could have been and what should have been. But in the end, you're going to relish, what you get accomplished, and it'll be remembered forever. It'll probably be a Jeopardy trivia question, somewhere down the road, and, just the big thing is where do they go from here? That they'll lose a lot next year, but they've got some talent coming back. They've got a couple red shirts. They had some guys that sat out this year for injuries that didn't play. And those are questions for 2 months and 3 months from now when they begin preparations. But for now, I'm sure that when the kids get back on campus this week, they're just going to relish in everything they've accomplished. The watch party that was there at the Sports Zone on campus was incredible, both Friday and Sunday nights. So, they're going to be very, very proud when they get back on campus and everything. And, Should be. Very well should be.
He is Buckets and Birds out on Twitter. He is Robert Canady, of course, down at Compass Point. He's changed his Twitter pictures. You got to go check that out. Doing statuesque poses as the golf season begins here after our final dose of precipitation. All of our WNST programming today powered up and caffeinated by our friends at Royal Farms. Real fresh, real fast. Little Kona blend in here, getting my day rocking through. Also brought to you by Howard Bank, a relentless commitment to being the best at everything they do. Branches now throughout Baltimore and Maryland. Want to remind everybody that we have a big event coming up next Thursday night. We're going to have head coach Barry Trotz from the Washington Capitals joining us at Michael's Cafe in Timonium. It's all brought to you by our friends at Freedmont Mortgage. You know why? Because we're going to be swabbing for the Bone Marrow Registry, and for There Goes My Hero to honor my wife, to try to save some more lives. Bring some young people out. Let's get them swabbed. If you got Caps fans in your life, if you love the Caps, maybe your neighbor, somebody on Facebook, let them know that we're going to be with head coach Barry Trotz previewing the Stanley Cup playoffs on the 29th. You may know that as opening day. Playing a little baseball game around here that day. That evening at 7:30, we'll be up in Timonium. So stop by, meet the coach, take a picture, talk some skipjacks, talk some Caps, talk some Stanley Cup playoffs. It's all brought to you by Freedmont Mortgage. Don't make a 30-year mistake by choosing the wrong lender. You need Freedmont's education online and Freedmont Mortgage. And, of course, Carl Delmont will be joining us later on in the week, talking a little soccer with the Harrisburg Heat as well. Cole Roofing also sponsoring all of our swabbings for the Bone Marrow Registry, as well as our Be More Positive community series, which begins on April 5th. We're going to be talking to various charities and learning a lot around here as we stop sticking to sports and mixing a little rock and roll, certainly serving the community well, as we have done for 2 decades here with the support of the good people like Cole Roofing and Bill Cole, who will be here a little later on. And want to remind you, by the way, if you got a commercial roofing space like they have down at Compass Point, these winds have been crazy, and the weather unlatches roofs and makes a mess. So don't let it goof on your roof. Call Cole Roofing, get them up there on the roof, make sure everything's going to make it through the spring and the summer. Robert Cannady's down there at Compass Point, hitting a little white dimpled ball when he's not chasing basketball. I guess this is officially when UMBC takes it a game further, or 2 games further than you maybe thought they were going to take it, that it's a very satisfying season on the local college circuit when something like UMBC happens, because Robert, it really dominated the whole weekend, not just locally, not just my Facebook timeline, but every time I looked up on the NCAA coverage, they couldn't get enough of UMBC.
They really couldn't. You use the term the national darlings, and I guess, it sounds a little corny and cliche, but they were, they were on national news. They were on NBC national news. They were on the Sunday morning, one of the Sunday morning national news shows. I can't remember if it was ABC or NBC. I think it was NBC Sunday morning Today Show, actually. All weekend long, they had coverage, and they were the story of the tournament. The first 2 days, the first 4 days, the first 2 rounds, absolutely. And with a couple number 1 seeds going out, one to their, because of their doing, and it was definitely something that's never been seen before. So,
can you imagine a sports book in Vegas, right? So that the time of the game, that it was about 10 o'clock, right? It's about 7 o'clock. You're out in Vegas, and you're out there for the biggest weekend of the year. I had my buddy Brandon Lang on last week talking about gambling in Vegas and handicapping, and he's like, you should put it on your bucket list to go out there and do a March Madness weekend. I've never done it. All the rates are up. It's almost like a boxing weekend out there, right? But can you imagine what that felt like in those sports books when UMBC sinking those shots if you had 21.5 points with them? I looked up at one point and I said to my wife, because we were at the Caps game and we were leaving, we went down to the locker room. I did a charitable turn for a friend of mine for Celtic soccer, for Carl Delmont with Barry Trotz, and we got in the car. My wife put it on her mobile phone and we're watching it, and I said, my God, if you're in Vegas, you got 40 points right now with UMBC when they were up 20. I'm like, you're going to win a bet that you just did for being a goof, just take the points on the 16 seed. But I can't imagine when that underdog spirit, other than just over at UMBC and every sports bar where people are watching it and paying attention, to finally see a 16 take down a 1, it's like seeing Halley's Comet or something, man.
Yeah, absolutely, and I have done the Vegas March Madness thing before, and it is crazy. And you're sitting there, and you're caring about games that you've never watched the game between these 2 teams before, but you've got that $5, $10, $50, $20, $100 ticket in your hand, whatever it is, and you know exactly what the spread is, and you're cheering for missed free throws, made free throws, and telling them not to shoot when there's 2 seconds left.
I'm not a gambler, and I always said, I've been on the air 27 years. I mean, I bet my first football game 10 years ago with my wife sitting out there on a Sunday bye weekend with the Ravens just to bet $20 to have some action, and I don't have that Jones in me, especially not on basketball where, you're waiting for garbage time threes that are going to push a line. It's different than a football game where it's a little more competitive. I don't know what kind of a degenerate you must be to bet on baseball. I don't,
that or hockey, I just couldn't see. But yeah, basketball, I would do it for fun, just to have some interest in it.
Yeah, and, if you like blackjack, there's no reason you wouldn't bet on a basketball game, I guess. But it's just not something that I feel like is a good use of my time. I don't know what else to say, But,
it was entertainment. We were out there for a conference. I didn't go out just for it, but it happened to correspond with the conference. And, you got to fill your nighttime with something. And, I love basketball, and what's better than, to see all 16 games probably laid out there on the screens in front of you in the sports book. So I did see a ticket tweeted from some guy at one of the books that placed, I guess, a $500 straight-up bet that paid, I think it was $21,000.
I saw that ticket, too. Yeah.
Something like that. Yeah, so that's incredible.
Robert Canady joining us here. He's Buckets and Birds, by the way. And, of course, you're closer to UMBC than anybody, right? I mean, literally around the team. Tell me about Lyles and tell me about where Ryan Odom is headed, because I think the next intelligent conversation is, he's headed to the ACC or that's what happens when the Cinderella thing happens, that a guy like Ryan Odom, who's the son of Dave Odom, who's a decorated guy, that this means he's NFL, not for long. I mean, usually, right?
Yeah, that's probably going to be the price of success, whether it's this year or next year or whatever, but, his stock will probably never be higher than it is right now, and they have the Final Four coming up in a few weeks, and other than the 4 teams involved, the other thing it becomes is the world's largest coaching job fair. So if I'm Dr. Robosky, I'm going to the Final Four with Ryan, and I'm not letting him more than 2 feet from my side all weekend. But that he's gonna, he's gonna get the calls. He's gonna get the offers, and I don't know. Honestly, I don't know Ryan well enough to know where he's at. I do know that Pat Scarry, for example, is very happy in Towson, and he's turned down some offers when they, of course, he's never made it to the tournament, but he's had his offers, and he's settled here with his family and the son that, he's got at Kennedy Krieger. Ryan has the son. I don't know if you've seen the story with Nicole Auerbach did, fascinating, a couple weeks ago, that he has a son that has a very high-level OCD that's been, actually had to travel out to Nashville to have treatment on. So, you wonder if, a call were to come from a Tennessee or a Vanderbilt or someone in that area, if that's something he considers, that would be easier on the family, or with their connections that he's got in North Carolina, for the years that he spent coaching there.
Well, it's a real turning point in your life. You know what I mean? And when I get Ryan, and we'll chat before the week's over, it's a turning point in your life. And it defines, what you're going to do, whether if you want to do what Pete Caringi did and stay, and say, look, I'm going to stay here for a while and try to build something up here, and then maybe at some point. But that's not usually the way it goes in that industry because of how much money is available at a bigger. It's just, it's not that industry doesn't work that way usually, right? I mean, the Mark Few's are few and far between, right?
Right. The Mark Few's, the Shaka Smarts who resisted for many years before finally taking them. I mean, who's going to fault someone for, taking a bigger job for more money? Every one of us would, for the most part, when given the opportunity. There is a lot here to build on. Like I said, they moved into the new arena this year. Now they've got some national prominence. You got to think it's going to help recruiting. It is a great educational institution. They have a freshman this year that they recruited from England, who probably has had the talent to go to some other power schools or high mid majors at least, but came here because of the academics. And
by the way, can I say this about UMBC? Because I didn't go to UMBC. My son wanted to at one point because he had a good time over there when he was a kid. Because we've always had a good time at the RAC, and they move into this new thing, and I don't even recognize it. Sort of. I found it fascinating over the weekend when no one knows anything about UMBC outside of here, right? That they look at it as sort of like this lesser school in some way. And I've always, when I've been there, felt like it was a place where really smart kids went. And when I'm there, I feel like one of the dumb kids on campus because I don't look at it at all. I mean, I don't judge it against the Hopkins where it has this Ivy League and certainly the doctors and the sort of science that's gone on at Johns Hopkins over 100 years. But when I think of UMBC, I think of it as an academic institution that probably won't ever be all that good at sports because you probably have to have some special qualifications to be able to get in there, because I think of it as a science school. I think of it as a school that I probably would have had a harder time getting into because I was not science-based. I talk for a living. You know what I mean?
Right. You're absolutely right. The reputation, locally is, many people know, how strong it is academically, and there's the thing of, the stigma of the alphabet schools. The UMBCs, a lot of times get ranked with the UMKCs, the IUPUIs and such, and just sometimes those are thought of as lesser schools just because of that, with no real logic behind it. But, that's
well, as a guy that went to a community college and as a guy that went to the University of Baltimore and as a guy who has a degree that I've never shown to anybody that I could be lying about it, even though my GPA really was 3.0, I mean, where these schools rank or the notion that, well, that's just a community college graduation program at UMC, KC, or wherever. I mean, I would see, but I saw derogatory things being thrown at UMBC, and I thought to myself, well, you clearly are just, you don't know what you're talking about. You know what I mean? Like, I've been here the last 30 years. UMBC's the tough place it's the place the nerds go because it's tough to get in there, and it's a smart school.
Absolutely is. Like you said, that I've seen some of those as well. And not just this weekend. I've seen it, being around the other campuses. And I understand college kids are college kids, And I've been at Towson when they diss, UMBC, which, really is kind of laughable. Maryland, I've seen the sign that was tweeted by the Maryland fan at the game where UMBC, University of Maryland Backup College, and, they're college kids, and that's what they do. They poke fun at each other and everything. But I think, it definitely got a lot of respect nationally this year as far as the national media talking about the chess team championships and the academics overall and everything. So it's they just couldn't buy that sort of publicity any other sort of way than being on forefront of the biggest sporting event, outside maybe the Super Bowl all year for 4 days. And it was just, fantastic to see.
He is Robert Canady. He is Buckets and Birds, and the Buckets are going away, and we're about to get to the Birds and hopefully some Eagles as well. He's down at Compass Point. Tell everybody what's going on down there. I know you got an Easter egg thing going on. You had green beer over the weekend as well as black and gold parties for the UMBC Retrievers, but you're getting warmed up out there even if the weather's not so warm this week.
It is, this winter is definitely hanging on and everything, but we are planning our annual Easter egg hunt. Do it this coming Saturday before Easter actually becomes. But it's a chance to get the kids out there on a golf course without clubs or anything, and run around in the grass and roll around and look for eggs that have prizes in them. We do a nice breakfast beforehand, and it's always been successful. It's always been fun, so it's just another way to kind of get people out to the course that may not have been there to play golf, or maybe they play golf and they come out for another reason. So, the Irish Open was a huge success a couple weeks ago, and then early in April we'll have our Masters Part 3 contest. It'll come up on the Friday of Masters Week, and so a lot going on in the spring to get the season going. We're
not far out on Masters. We're a week out on opening day. It's UMBC is the toast of the college basketball world. Good times around here this week. We picked a good year to chronicle all things UMBC and Coppin and Towson and Loyola. It was a great little local run, but I'm sure you and I will be turning our attention toward golf and Tiger Woods moving forward. We'll look forward to having you on again next week, Rob.
Sounds good, mister. We'll talk to you then.
You got it. Robert Canady. He is Buckets and Birds out on Twitter as well as down at Compass Point Golf. And you can find them out on the web and certainly down at funky Pasadena for the Easter egg hunt. And when the weather lightens up just a little bit, next couple days won't be so good, but hopefully by the weekend things will turn around. Don't forget, we have head coach Barry Trotz joining us. We'll be swabbing for the Bone Marrow Registry at Michael's Cafe next Thursday night. You know it is opening day. It's the 29th. After the game, or come by, watch the game at Michael's and stay for head coach Trotz and talk some hockey, preview the Stanley Cup playoffs. I'll be joined by Ed Frankovic. We'll be swabbing for There Goes My Hero. It's all brought to you by Freedmont Mortgage and our friends at Cole Roofing. Reminder about Royal Farms, real fresh, real fast. I've been enjoying the Kona Blend here today. You can download the app, use that for points, get your Western fries, your fried chicken. I almost stopped and got me a couple of wings on the way back from Judas Priest on Sunday night down there at the Anthem to toast the UMBC season. But I did not stop in. Alas, it was late into the evening, and I just opted for the coffee in the morning instead. Pizza John's, my mom's favorite pizza, my wife's favorite pizza, my favorite pizza. Cheesesteaks. They're down there at Back River Neck Road. 50 years they've been doing it down there. I'm going to go get me a pizza this weekend as well. Go visit our friends at Pizza John's and follow them on social media as well, because when you follow them on social media, they put the pictures of the pizza up with the pepperonis, and next thing you know, you're going to want to go down there and maybe even get the meat sauce like Luke does. Nasty at WNST.net finds me on the internet. We're out in the buyatoyota.com audio vault 24 hours a day. Lots of UMBC fallout this week. Getting ready for opening day, and certainly fallout on the Michael Crabtree, Ryan Grant stuff. All of that in the buyatoyota.com audio vault at WNST.net. Our morning newspaper still shipping out every morning at 7 a.m. to your email inbox. It's all brought to you by our friends at Planet Fitness at planetfitness.com, where it's still $10 a month to get in the best shape of your life. There's a Planet Fitness right around the corner. Spring is springing right now, so get yourself into the gym. You'll feel great about things at Planet Fitness. Our morning newspaper also features the entries for the Maryland Jockey Club and Laurel this weekend. There's racing. Big stakes race last week. We had Stan Salter on as well, talking about the state of racing and Justify as the Derby hopefuls as we get up on Derby week. We got Masters, we got Derby, and of course the Preakness and the Pink Weekend coming up now 7 weeks away. Hi-ho, Pimlico. The news happens fast, man. Don't blink around here. Ryan Grant, a Raven? Ryan Grant, not a Raven. Michael Crabtree, a Raven. It all happens first on the WNST Tech Service. It's all brought to you by our friends at Coons Ford of Security Boulevard. And, of course, Dennis Colatzos will be here on Thursday from 3 until 5, getting you ready for another weekend of basketball and one weekend closer to his favorite, the NFL Draft. Now, with a wide receiver in the fold on Michael Crabtree, plenty to talk about with the NFL, and I'm headed to Orlando this weekend for the NFL owners' meetings. We'll be broadcasting live from Orlando all next week, including John Harbaugh's morning breakfast chat with us on Tuesday morning. That's next week here at WNST.net. I am Nestor. Nasty at WNST.net, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, streaming live right here on our Facebook Live, as well as our YouTube WNSTV channel. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.